the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
This day has been coming, and it's a day that we all need to lean in on this issue of protecting children. Over 10 years ago, through a Supreme Court decision, the decision to dysregulate and take the normal out of children's lives was decided by the Supreme Court in Obergefell versus Hodges. The legalization of so-called gay marriage, same-sex marriage. People thought it was just about adult desires. But in fact, what we've seen is that it's led to prioritizing adult desires over children's needs. There is a national effort called Greater Than Campaign that is pushing for the overturning of Obergefell versus Hodges, the 2015 Supreme Court decision giving a so-called right to so-called same-sex marriage. What happened when this was determined was that a child's right to a mom and a dad was removed. Stability was thrown out the door. A child's identity in maleness and femaleness and understanding their self in relation to their biological mother and their biological father was thrown out the door. Their stability, their identity, their safety, and their very thriving. I have heard for decades, whether it had to do with divorce or now everything from the normalcy of kids not being with their parents when they need to be, not being with their biological parents. I've heard for so long that children are resilient. But the fact is they aren't. And when you try to research, how are children impacted by same-sex marriage or same-sex relationships? The internet lies to you because there's a perspective out there. And that's why in the coming weeks, we're going to dive into the research, the data, the social information that tells the truth about what kids need. We need to put an end to 21st century social norms that have replaced adult desires over a child's well-being. Clarissa, Madison, Jonathan, Nicole, Matthew, these children who have real names and real desires for a mom and a dad. You see, legalized so-called same-sex marriage, quote-unquote gay marriage, treated parents as replaceable, mother or father as interchangeable. You see, we've changed birth records, birth certificates. We've changed the legal status. Things such as a legal context of throwing out mother or father, making them interchangeable, labeling things such as parent 1 and parent 2. Not related to biology. Many children born especially since the Supreme Court decision in 2015 of Obergefell versus Hodges, many children don't even know who they came from because we changed the legal status, the legal representation, the documentation of children. It's led to unfathomable offenses. Unfathomable offenses. I talk a lot about surrogacy. Now, people think surrogacy and in vitro fertilization are just about children being possible for infertile couples. But that's not what IVF and surrogacy has become. There's a reason why it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, not just because so many people are suffering and facing infertility today, but because people who harm children can now commission children. You have stories, and this has in part been made possible when we destabilize what marriage is, which is an institution to protect children and has been for century after century after century in every culture. What we did is we destabilized that when we said there's such a thing as quote unquote so-called gay marriage, same-sex marriage. You see, here are some of the offenses, and we've talked about these here on the show. Children are being mass produced by people who have a lot of money, people who want to sell children on the black market. We told the story last summer, and we've talked about it multiple times this year. In Los Angeles, California, 21 children and those are just the ones we know about, were created via IVF and surrogacy by Chinese immigrants who have strong ties to the CCP. They had these children. Most of the children were around and under the age 5, most of them born after 2021. We're talking about little toddlers and babies. And these are kids who are the same age as my 5-year-old, 3-month-old, and 8-month-old. These children who are being abused. This mansion hotel-like facility in Los Angeles, California, where it was like a hotel. These women were checking in, checking out. There were babies everywhere. It's a mess. This is because when we say that parents are interchangeable, we don't need mom and dad on the birth certificate. We don't need mom and dad protecting one child who is theirs. This is what happens with IVF and surrogacy. There's also the context of the fact that we have known data and photos of child sex offenders, pedophiles, who have been able to acquire children through IVF and surrogacy and who are in same-sex relationships. We also had the story in San Francisco, which I just learned about last year, a 74-year-old man who after retirement decided that he wanted children. And so he commissioned through in vitro fertilization and via a surrogate and has twin boys. Those 6-year-old twin boys were found in literal custom-made cages in this elderly man's home. These are the abuses that happen when we destabilize and change the legal status of marriage of mother and father. This is why there has been a national coalition made, greater than campaign, saying enough is enough. Obergefell versus Hodges must be overturned. Children have been deprived of their mother and their father by the legalization of same-sex marriage. They've lost stability from that separation, from that primal relationship. They've lost a sense of identity, a sense of safety itself, thriving. I look at my 8-month-old baby. When his world is dysregulated, which can be over small things or large things, what is he calling for? Mom, 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 mom. When my 5-year-old is sick and just wants to be home and coddled and loved in my arms. These are things children need. I remember the singer Lance Bass from NSYNC, total 90s kid right now. And he is in a same-sex relationship, maybe a so-called same-sex marriage. And because of that, he had a legal right to go through with the process of IVF and surrogacy. And he is one of many who have gone through IVF and surrogacy. And I remember covering it here on the show, and where he literally talks about how his kids, through IVF and surrogacy, guess what? They don't cuddle and snuggle with him the way he wants. But suddenly when his mom is there, these kids are hungry. They are parched. They are starving for female maternal affection. And praise God, he has a mother who's a stand-in grandmother for these children who's able to help give that. But he has recognized what is missing. And as much as I love my parents, my children's grandparents, they are great. They play a primary role in my children's lives, but they are never mom. They can never satiate that primal need, that primal right to my children's biological mother. No man can fill that right, that need, that primal desire for a child's particular father. All of this was made so that we have this, some people call in other countries, the United States, as the wild, wild west of IVF and surrogacy, and how children are being allowed to just be created and thrown around. Children have been deprived of their mother and father by the legalization of same-sex marriage. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie here on Relevant Radio. We're talking about the Greater Than campaign that after over 10 years of so-called same-sex marriage being legal through Obergefell versus Hodges, that Supreme Court decision 2015, that there's a national coalition, many organizations and people stepping up and saying it's time to end same-sex marriage because it hurts children. We need to restabilize marriage for children. And you know what? The Catholic Church gets it right. Marriage is between one man and one woman. That it's meant to be monogamous. It's meant to be permanent till death do us part. Jesus himself talks about this, saying, no one shall separate when he's asked about marriage. No man shall separate. It's meant to be unitive, the one flesh union. The two shall become one flesh. It's meant to be procreative. As a result, one flesh can only happen between male and female. We don't click any other way. It's meant to be procreative, that we are fruitful and we multiply. And as the Catholic Church's teaching is very clear, the primary end of marriage is the procreation, that is having children and educating them. These are the realities of marriage and family that we must fight for. We need to fight so that children are no longer put at risk. We must be a child-centered fighting force. And this is what Catholic Christians have always done. We have built hospitals to fight for and care for the sick and abused and poor. The Catholic Church has fought when women, young girls, were not being educated, for children and women, female girls, to be educated. The Catholic Church has fought to end human sacrifice. The Catholic Church has fought to maintain monogamy. We can fight to do this, and we need to be willing to recognize that some people are going to be a little upset by our message. But here's the deal. This is what's so beautiful about this campaign and this focus. It's about the children, and children's needs are greater than adults' desires. When you see children raised by two men or two women, you see a child who has lost something so primal. I don't have to tell you. Look at the mommy wounds and the daddy wounds in this culture, whether it's you or someone you know firsthand, whether it was your experience or the experience of a friend or a close family member, how wounded we are as individuals when there is damage to our biological mother and our biological father's relationship with us. And people will make many and various arguments, and we'll engage in some of those. Such as, well, what about adoption? Why is it that you're okay with adoption? In adoption, you don't create a child ahead of time to go into a home where their right to their biological mother and father have been thrown out. We break a child's home when we do surrogacy and IVF, which is what has been allowed. And in adoption, we're taking a child who can't be in that home environment and trying to give them the best possible circumstance with a mother and a father to care for them who are willing to stand in and to raise those children. Now, people will say, well, shouldn't gay couples have a right to children? I'm sorry. Gay couples don't have a right to children, but straight people don't have a right to children as well. And this is part of the problem with IVF and surrogacy. We do not have a right to just get children however we want. They are not a commodity. They are not a purse. They are not a dog. We are not meant to be breeders, and that's what we've become. You have a right as a man and a woman meant to be within a monogamous, marital, permanent, unitive, faithful relationship. You have a right to create children naturally, not to create them at a whim. And sometimes we are limited by nature. See, this is why we are fighting for children, so that children are no longer put at risk. This is why there's an end being called for to Obergefell versus Hodges that legalized same-sex marriage, which dysregulated and legally changed the status of mother and father within the home. Children's needs are greater than adults' desires. And what can you do? You can start talking. This is our role, to advocate for children. You can learn more at greaterthancampaign.org, and we're going to continue to be a part of this fight to overturn what has made it so that children have been harmed by gay marriage, and that through monogamous one man, one woman marriage, children are protected. The stabilization of their environment is upheld.
That was the Best of the Week on Relevant Radio. The best way to listen to the Best of the Week is on the Relevant Radio app, free and always free. Download and share the #1 free Catholic app today in the App Store.